At this time, I would like to call the meeting to order. Today is Thursday, August 13th, 2026, and this is a meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission for the City of West Hollywood. We would like to begin by acknowledging that the land in which we gather, currently known as the City of West Hollywood, is the occupied, unceded, seized territory of the Gabrielino Tongva and Gabrielino Kizh peoples. And Commissioner Bass would like to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
Please stand and repeat after me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Ms. Secretary, may we please have a roll call?
Commissioner Bass?
Here.
Commissioner Copeland is absent. Commissioner Kirpies?
Here.
Commissioner Rory?
Here.
Commissioner Topchin?
Here.
Vice Chair McCafferty?
Here.
And Chair Goldman.
Here. We have a quorum. Okay, we'll now move to approve the agenda. Has everybody had a chance to review tonight's agenda? I'll give a minute.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We can do a voice vote. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, motion passes. And then we'll move to the approval of the minutes. So we have the minutes for the meeting of July 9th, 2026. Has everyone had a chance to review those?
I'll move them as presented.
Do we have a second?
Second.
Okay. Maybe let's do a voice vote again for that. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, so motion passes. We'll now move on to public comment. And do we have speakers from the public? Okay, so speakers, when you come up, please state your name and city of residence, and then you'll have 3 minutes to speak. So we have Speaker Eugene.
Good evening, Chair Goldman, Vice Chair McCafferty, Commissioners, City staff. My name is Eugene Maiska. I'm a tenant outreach organizer for Coalition for Economic Survival for the City of West Hollywood. Tonight I'm here to speak in support of option 1 on the city staff report, and thank you for that very thorough report. For the item 9A, which pertains to calculations of the yearly percentage paid to tenants based on security deposit held by the landlords. It's very important that through our work in the field and our outreach to tenants that we do on a weekly basis, we see a lot of landlords sometimes even forgetting for decades to inform their tenants that they need to get those security deposits on a yearly basis. So keeping in place the system that we consider to be not bulletproof, but very working, and maybe enforcing information, providing that information to tenants in the rent-stabilized properties would be crucial in this matter. So tenants who are not informed, unfortunately, in many buildings have not been receiving those percentages that are calculated during the January and on February 1st that they are supposed to receive them. So this is something that I think we all can support. So option 1 would be our choice. Thank you so much for your time.
Okay, thank you. And next public comment is Kevin Ligon. Ligon, and anyone feel free to correct names. Of course, state your first and last name and city of residence.
Good evening, Vice Chair McCafferty, Chair Gold, and the commissioners and the city. I appreciate it. I'm Kevin Ligon. I live in West Hollywood. I want to tell you that that I agree with that we maintain the current system for deposits. Tonight, I'm here to speak in support of option 1 on the city staff report, item 9A, regarding calculations of the yearly percentage on security deposits paid to tenants. One of the things I want to inform or remind people is that the deposits are actually like an insurance policy for the landlords. So it's money tied up from the tenants, they're tied up, the money is tied up, and it ensures for the landlords that they are able to take the deposit at any time when there's damage to the unit or anything like that. So it is basically, we're paying an insurance policy. And so being able to take some of the interest from the fact that it's stored for us and for the landlords in response to ensuring that their properties are protected. So I thought that keeping this system the way it is benefits both parties. Thank you very much.
Thank you. We will now move on to the manager report. Ms. Rollins, may we have the report, please?
Absolutely, Chair Goldman. For the record, my name is Leona Rollins, Rent Stabilization Manager for the City of West Hollywood, and I'll be presenting our look-ahead calendar for Thursday, August 13th. This evening, we'll be scheduled to hear 2 appeals. The first appeal is for D5101, located at 1133 North Vista Street. And our second appeal of the evening will be D-4642 CD1, which is located at 915 North Spalding Avenue. We will also have 2 discussions/presentations this evening, one on a security deposit interest rate methodology, and also a presentation on AB 628. At our next scheduled meeting on August 27th, we'll have 2 appeals scheduled for that evening as well. The first one will be D-4945 CD1 at 948 Hilldale Avenue. And our second appeal that evening will be D-5091 located at 7621 Hampton Avenue. We will also be presenting our mid-year operational update to the Commission for their review. And then 2 quick notes for our September 10th meeting. The scheduled presentations, which are the evaluation guidelines, ad hoc subcommittee update, as well as our policy update for our rent stabilization ordinance. Both of those items will be moving to our first scheduled meeting in the month of October, given the fact that we'll be having stakeholder engagement meetings throughout the month of September. And that is a look-ahead calendar for this evening. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rollins. My button was stuck. Any commissioners have questions? Commissioner Kerpes?
So are you saying that September 10th will be canceled? Did I miss that part? Or
So for the September 10th meeting, as of right now, that meeting will not be canceled unless both of our scheduled appeals will be basically resolved through our mediation practices. We did, at the time, not schedule any appeals for that evening, given the fact we were going to hear the evaluation guidelines update and the policy update on the rent stabilization ordinance, which we are anticipating a significant amount of public comment. But now that that item is going to be moving to the first meeting in October, our plan is to schedule at least 2 appeals for each respective meeting in the month of September.
oh, okay.
Any other questions from commissioners? Okay, seeing none, so we will now move to the appeal portion of our agenda. We have 2 appeals before the commission this evening, D-5101 and D-4642 CD1. We will begin with D-5101. Do we have a representative from the tenant and the landlord? Not just yet. Yeah, I was just asking the secretary. Yes, okay. Okay, so first we will hear a staff report from our legal counsel, and then the appellant will come. You'll have 5 minutes to provide your oral argument, and you have the option of dividing your 5 minutes into 2 segments. You may use part of your 5 minutes to state your case and part of your 5 minutes for rebuttal. and then the respondent will speak second. You'll have one 5-minute segment to state your case on the subject, and you cannot divide your time. So when it's your time to speak, please state your name and city of residence for the record, and the appellant will state how you would like to divide your time, if you want to divide it at all, and then you proceed with your comments. And so since you do have a limited time to speak, it's very important to keep these things in mind. You want to stay on topic. We can only discuss what's in the case, so anything outside of that we won't be able to discuss. So the only information you share should be on the appeal topic. And any new evidence can not be considered by the commission, and you may only discuss issues that were raised at the hearing or evidence submitted to the hearing examiner. So legal counsel, may we have a staff report?
You may. Good evening, Chair and Commissioners. My name is Kellen Martz, Legal Counsel to the Rent Stabilization Commission. The first appeal we have tonight, and I'm going to be a little bit more brief since we have a packed evening, but feel free to ask questions, is D-5101 at 1133 North Vista Street. In this matter, the tenant filed an application in 2025 for a rent reduction related to unit-specific common area issues and also a MAR determination. The application was completed in November 2025. A hearing was held in February 2026. Tenant and common area tenants attended that hearing and testified. The landlord did not appear at that hearing. The record was left open for both parties to submit further evidence. The landlord asked that the record be left open even further than that was previously ordered due to his being out of the country. That request was denied by the hearing examiner, and the record did close on February 24th, 2026. A decision was issued in April of 2026, granting in part and denying in part the tenant's rent reduction request. The hearing examiner determined the MAR to be 2214.50 cents, and did order a rent overcharge of 3,225 cents. There were other rent reductions established, both common area and unit specific. The landlord filed an appeal asserting that the decision was reached without a complete record and the math was calculated incorrectly as to the MAR. Landlord argues that the determination is clearly in error, not reasonably supported by the findings or evidence in the record, an abuse of discretion and contrary to law. The questions before you are as to 5 issues. First, the MAR, then the interior paint, then the front door seal, then plumbing, and lastly, the washing machine quality. First question as to the MAR. Is there substantial evidence in the record to support the decision as to the MAR? Landlord's appeal states that the base rent was $21.95 rather than $21.50. Staff believes that the hearing examiner was correct in this determination. As evidence in the staff report, there are numerous parts of the lease that are more reasonably assumed to be $21.50 and not $21.95. Lease section 1.3 states that the monthly rental rate is $21.50 and has a separate monthly fee for trash, water, and sewer. There also was a lease reduction at the start of the lease that reduced the rent from $23.50 to $21.50. And I won't reiterate everything in the staff report, but staff does believe that there is substantial evidence in the record to support the MAR as determined by the hearing examiner. Staff also believes there is substantial evidence in the record as to the interior paint, the front door seal issue, and the plumbing issue. Staff does recommend a reversal as to the washing machine issue. Beyond the limited testimony provided by the tenant, there is little evidence in the record to show that there was damage or inadequate maintenance of the washing machine. And so based on what we saw in the record, we do recommend reversal. And that concludes my report.
Thank you. All right, so we will now begin oral arguments. So we have the appellant. Can you come forward, please? and state your name, city of residence, and then let us know, the secretary can keep time. Let us know how you'd like to divide your time.
Thank you. Good evening. My name is George Cigaron. I'm the regional manager in West Hollywood, Los Angeles.
And
I would like to spend 3 minutes and 2 minutes if possible. Thank you. Well, good evening, commissioners. Thank you very much. My name is George Cigaron. I'm the regional manager for a property on Vista Townhouse LP, 1133 North Vista. I'm here today to respond on the staff report and appeal filed by the landlord of this property. The landlord agrees with the staff recommendation on one point, the issue of the washer. We agree that that should be reversed. However, we disagree with the two others, which are the base rent of the maximum allowable rent and the staff decision not to consider any evidence of the completed repairs prior to the appeal and closing of the file. There are really three issues in front of you today. The first is actually when the lease began and what supports the $21.95 base rent, not the $21.50. Second, whether the landlord repairs and records should have been included in the examiner's hearing decision on whether the rent decrease application D5105. And the third was the washer, of course, that we all agree on. The staff's recommendation on the rent lease states that section 1.3 is a monthly apartment rental rate of $21.50, treating a separate $45 charge for the trash, water, and sewer as something apart from the rent. We'd ask the commission to look past that single line item and actually go on what record actually shows from the charge as of day one. In the West Hollywood City's own re-registration confirmation, which was signed and completed by both parties, landlord and resident, and accepted by the Rent Stabilization Ordinance Agency, filed in October 27, 2021, and shortly then moved in with the resident June 25, 2021. The city's confirmation lists the move-in rent as $21.95, not $21.50. That's the city's own record, filed and accepted by Rent Stabilization Division upon commencement of the lease and signed and accepted by both parties. The ledger shows that the tenant was charged $21.95 every single month from the first month full of tenancy in July 21 all the way through the course of the entire lease. The $45 was not optional. It wasn't a usage-based cost. It was a fixed, non-waivable condition of occupancy, billed at the same schedule and the same amount for the full term of the tenancy. Under West Hollywood law, for a unit rented for the first time after April 30th, 1984, the base rent shall mean the rent first charged for the unit. We believe the city's own registration record, corroborated with the ledger, is compelling evidence enough to show that the rent has always been treated as $21.95. We ask that the commission agree that the MAR overpayment calculation be waived, recalculating back the base rent to $21.95. Evidence of repair. The second issue is about the evidence that was never considered. The hearing examiner declined to weigh the landlord's documentation of the completed repairs. The washing machine records, the front door repair, the painting that was also concluded. These were all issues that were addressed with Rob Strom, the assigned West Hollywood mediator and the resident. During the negotiations and mediation, both the resident and the mediator.
3 minutes.
3 minutes. Were delayed in the rent.
Okay. So that's your time.
Yes, thank
So
you. Okay.
Chair.
you can keep going if you want. You can take the whole 5 minutes, or if you can take longer if you want.
Just finishing.
But-
Pretty much
okay.
the landlord requested an extension. It was denied, and at this point, the landlord is requesting to be heard on the documentation submitted as evidence.
Okay, thank you. Okay, questions from commissioners? Commissioner Kerpes.
Thank you. You mentioned the two line items. Did he write checks for two separate items as well, 2150 and 45 or whatever the?
No.
It was all in one check.
Yes.
Okay, that was my question. Thank you.
Commissioner Topchain.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening, sir. Just quickly, what was the reason why, if you're saying that the rent was $21.95, what was the reason why you separated those two lines in the rental agreement, and also the rent ledger reflects rental income is $21.50 and the separate charges for water, sewer, trash for $45?
The landlord had an ability to do that before the law was imposed in March of 2022. That's how their leases were at that time. Unfortunately, this was an older lease, so it never was adjusted to actually include the new law, which was passed.
but the ledger is from what, 2022, I believe, or 2021, that shows the two separate lights. It's not that old.
Yeah, that's how it's always been in the system until I believe 2023 when they actually changed the accounting on the system.
Okay, nothing at this time.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing nothing, so you can take a seat and then we'll call you back. Thank you. Okay, can we now have the respondent at this time, Justin Jackson?
Hi, it's Justin Jackson here from West Hollywood. So initially, I agree with the proposed resolution except for the reversal of the washer credits. So I'm asking the commission to consider our substantial evidence contained in the hearing record to support the hearing examiner's original determination. Myself, Joe and Julie are also here. I provided multiple photos, evidence, and issues that cause us to have to utilize the washing machine multiple times for it to be efficient, such as rewashing multiple times, costing more money out of pocket, going to professional cleaners, and also having to go to other laundromats. And so with that, Joe and Julie are also here as well, and that's basically my time, so thank you.
Okay, thank you. We're going to have questions from commissioners. Okay, any questions? Vice Chair.
Forgive me, I know you went into a little bit, but can you describe, I see on the evidence presented, I think it's the last page, like the very last 2 pages of our packets, there's some pictures of the washer and like 2 pictures of articles of clothing, I think. Can you describe what the intent of these pictures, like what are these pictures showing? What's your intent with these pictures?
Yes, so the picture of the washer and dryers were to showcase how outdated the machines were. And so I think within that it showed the machine's, I guess, SKU number. And then the pictures were showcasing the clothes after multiple washes still having like lint and cat hair and stuff like that as well. So just basically showcasing that A, the machines were outdated, and B, they weren't efficient.
Okay, thank you.
I just have a follow-up because the audio cut out a little. I just wanted to make sure. Are you saying that you tried to show a picture of like a wrinkled shirt or a wrinkled garment to show that it wasn't working?
So it was actually a wash article of clothing that was washed through it multiple times. So just showing that there was still like lint and like debris on it that would have been taken away if the machine was actually obsolete.
Okay, and so you're saying the lint was in the photograph you took?
Yes, correct.
Okay.
And then Julie and Joseph are here as well to also speak to the clothing as well.
Got it. Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions from commissioners? Okay. Okay, seeing none. So now we actually have speakers from the public. So we have two testimonies from the public. Madam Secretary, do they have 3 minutes also? Okay. So you'll have 3 minutes to speak and you'll state your name and city of residence for the record. So can we have Joseph Johnson?
Yes. I am basically going to attest with Justin.
Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Can I have you state your name and city of residence for the record first, and then you can go ahead.
Joseph Johnson, City of West Hollywood.
Thanks.
I will agree and attest with everything that Justin Johnson was presenting in his case. We've had to deal with, multiple washes and, concerns with the older units. And we've also had to go off-site, and we have records that show the evidence that we submitted within the first time that, we basically had to go and, report on these, different locations, and basically everything that Justin said, we were experiencing.
Okay. Thank you. And then now may we have Julie George speak. And again, state your name and city of residence for the record. You'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, this is Julie George. George. I live in West Hollywood, and yeah, I just wanted to second both what Joseph and Justin said. The machine, since moving in, sometimes require multiple washes and sometimes end up dirtier after the wash than they began, like having, you know, lint or other items and debris kind of pushed into the clothing. Again, we've done this our third time now, so I'm not exactly, I need to look into what picture you guys are showing, because we submitted things in April and I think February too, so, but we sent a bunch of pictures. It wasn't to show that it was wrinkly, just to show like, hey, there's debris on this and it's been washed and hung up and it still looks like that. And yeah, just the inconsistency, the machines often broke down while using them, and then not fixed in time, leading to moldy clothes. So it was just consistently breaking down. And now that we have new machines, which we're grateful for the new machines, and now the credits work differently and they cost more, and the app and the machine don't even connect with the pricing. So it's still unfortunately an issue, but yeah, I just wanted to second that or reinstate that I too had a ton of issues with this washing machine, had to bring laundry to friends' house at times just because it was just a waste of time and money.
Okay, thank you. We're now going to have the rebuttal portion, so we'll have the appellant come up, and then, Ms. Secretary, can you tell him how much time is left?
You have 1 minute and 47 seconds left.
Thank you. So applying the evidence, the washers were under a third-party agency. They were owned and operated by an outside agency who did a service agreement and had pretty much service contracts. And we also showed records in our appeal that the residents continue to use the washing machines without hesitation. So, I mean, any report that came from damages or anything issued had to go through the third-party agency for their report. In regards to the other issues in regards to the repairs, the senator just wants to state that the extension was denied in February 2026. He was out of the country. The record was closed. The hearing examiner did not give in a sufficient time for him to complete all the necessary items during the course of mediation, and that the mediator itself was also out of the town during the same time. So along with the mediator being out of town, the owner not being present, and also the rescheduling of multiple times by the resident, which was submitted in the appeal, the owner doesn't feel it was fair enough for him not to be heard as far as the repairs that are being completed or were completed at the time of the decision of the examiners.
Okay, thank you. I'll ask you to stay and see if there are any commissioner questions.
Just to clarify, so were the repairs done by the time of the hearing?
The majority of the repairs were done.
By the time of the hearing?
Yes, sir. The only thing that were pending were the rescheduled items that the tenant did not allow.
So why didn't the landlord present evidence prior to leaving the country or make arrangements?
He was out of the country. He was in Iran, and unfortunately was
He didn't know anything about the hearing?
He did not. He was not. He actually had to hire somebody that knew what was going on.
Any other commissioner questions? Yeah, Vice Chair.
There might be, but it's a big packet. So this isn't like a leading question, but have you submitted evidence that shows the washer was checked out and repaired after or before the hearing? Like, what kind of evidence did you guys submit to show that this third party looked at the washer to make sure it was okay?
We submitted the service agreement of the third-party agency, as well as a ledger showing the residents continue to use the usage of the washing machines.
What's the third party agency called?
CSC Service Works.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, so you may take your seat.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, so we will now move on to the deliberation portion and discussion. So would any commissioners like to kick us off? Yes.
I had a question for council, maybe. Could you remind myself about the rules related to how the MAR is determined, and when there is a lease agreement that separately specifies the rental amount, just to refresh my recollection on that point?
Yes, I can. So the first analysis is to look at what the base rent is and then see if the AGA increases on that were appropriate. And when you look at the lease under our code, the base rent is the rent actually charged. And so, Commissioner Topshian pointed to some of these questions is why was it separated out separately? And that's the crux of the issue here is what was the rent actually charged for the unit? If they're all lumped together, then that's one thing. But here, the rent charge for this unit from staff's perspective is $21.50, and then the charges of $45 were something that are not rent. And so the base rent is $21.50 from the hearing examiner's decision, and then staff believes that the hearing examiner was correct. And so that separation is the key distinction there.
Then one more follow-up question on the washing machine issue. Is it correct that the commission tonight could decide to uphold the hearing examiner's decision and not reverse on that issue? And would an interpretation of the pictures that were shown by this commission be potentially enough to be substantial evidence to base that recommendation on?
Yes, you can uphold the hearing examiner's decision in full. When you uphold the decision, you adopt the findings of the hearing examiner, so you wouldn't necessarily need to make additional findings as to the washing machine. You can, but you're not required to. So if the commission chooses to, they would just vote to uphold on that issue, and whatever you decide in your deliberations would be enough.
Okay. Yes, Commissioner Kirby.
Yeah, I want to get some more clarification on the rent issues still. Would you mind, I don't want to make you read it to us, but can you point me to the section, the code section that determines, defines what rent is? I think it was a little bit more expansive than what.
Yes, one moment, and I will. So there's not a very crisp and clean answer, but it is Municipal Code Section 1708010 definitions, and it's under the base rent definition, and then it's subsection H. For tenants whose tenancies commenced on or after January 1st, 1999, base rent shall mean the rent charged to the tenants at the inception of the tenancy. So from my perspective, you're really looking at what rent is, and rent shall mean the consideration, which is the money paid for the use or occupancy of the rental unit. And so that is where the hearing examiner got that.
And so if the landlord would have not included that on a separate line, water and utilities, whatever it was, they still have to provide it, right? They still have to provide those services?
Yeah, so they could have done $21.95 and then said those are included services,
Or didn't even have to say included services, right? Because they have to include them.
Correct. Okay. And I just want to note the definition is for the occupancy of the rental unit and related housing services. To be clear, related housing services are not utilities. It's, the pool or the garage or anything like that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions or commissioners want to discuss? Commissioner Topchin?
No questions. I'm in agreement with staff's recommendations regarding this appeal. There's no question for me concerning the findings of the legal rent or the MAR, which is $21.50, and it's clearly the landlord meant to separate these charges from rent, $45 utilities from the MAR, and which is evidenced by another support to that argument is that the landlord also separated the utility security deposit, which is a separate. It seems the landlord's intent from the beginning was to separate these two things: the actual MAR, the rent, from the utility fees. So, and thank you, commissioners, for the questions regarding the washer. I think I'm going to support everything the staff recommends here, and that's it. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Does anybody want to discuss laundry, or just kind of taking a?
I'm open to a discussion on laundry, but I echo Commissioner Topchin's comments on the MAR and the other issues. But I thought the picture was kind of intending to show that the machines weren't working, and I guess there was some lint on there, and I don't know if folks feel like that was substantial evidence, because I think that's the crux on the laundry issue, right? It's like they're saying the hearing examiner was offering the rent reduction, but then staff is saying, well, we don't think there was really substantial evidence in the record to support that, and we're saying, well, there's pictures of a shirt that was supposed to be showing lint. I understand that there might be new machines already in there, or that's what I picked up on, so this is kind of maybe like a past issue, and then the landlord could file for a restoration request and then restore any, rent reduction for the washing machine, or dryer, or whatever that reduction was for. But I was open to that if others were. I'm not leading the charge, though. I'm just saying I'm open to that.
Okay, and Vice Chair?
I agree on the washer. To me, the evidence is, and I could be missing a page or something, so please, if anyone else sees something else. So on our packet in the blue page numbers, 56, that I'm seeing annual service, it's laundry, repairs, and maintenance, a bill for it, but it's dated July 2020. And then this appeal and the appeal was filed in late 2025. The hearing happened early 2026. So that's a long time from a repair charge to this. So 5-6 years, that's time for something to kind of stop working. The other charges that I see associated with this CSC are for rent, which I assume is renting the machines itself, which to me is not a maintenance charge. That's just a normal renting the machines. So this one's tough because it's hard to present in a paper or PDF how your washer is or is not working. This one's super tough, but these receipts don't tell a story of my tenant complained about it not working, we went and got it fixed, and now it's fine. It tells more of a story of we fixed something 6 years ago, and then we also just have a regular occurring rent. Again, I'm combing through, I'm trying to find another CSC charge, but everything else to me says it's the rental of the machines. So I'm open to discussing this.
Yeah, I'm open as well, similarly. Any other? Commissioner Bass, do you have thoughts?
Yeah, we often debate up here about whether or not we would have come to the same conclusion that the hearing examiner would, but is there enough evidence that a reasonable person could come to that place? And that's kind of where I came down. I think staff was reasonable in suggesting that it wasn't substantial, and I think the hearing examiner was reasonable in saying that it was. And so for that reason, I would be inclined not to reverse on that point. But again, much like Commissioner Rory, I'm not leading that charge, but that's probably where I'd land. Otherwise, I agree with my colleagues.
What do you think, Josh?
Yeah.
So just in total, the two issues that I'm caught up on is the rent and the washer. The washer, I think I would like to tend to agree with the hearing examiner, although I agree just on a personal level with staff. But I think the hearing examiner took into consideration the fact that it was minor and gave the lesser amount. So I'm satisfied, I think, with the fact that the hearing examiner reviewed that thoroughly and came to an assumption that seems reasonable had I been the one, reviewing the evidence. So I'm kind of indifferent, but I'm leaning towards just upholding the hearing examiner's decision on the other one. I personally have much more of a problem with the, and I'm reading the definition here over and over, but I know that we often say what is charged for rent is what the rent is, and that's what we usually say in most cases. In most cases, that usually leans or goes back to the tenant, as benefits the tenant because the landlord has done some other thing where they've given you a discount and all this other stuff. There was no discount here. There's no trickery. It's a common part of your rent. Anyways, I have no idea why a landlord would intentionally separate it like the way they did, because a situation like this could come up. I don't feel like the tenant was ever deceived. They've always paid the same amount. So I just have a real problem with, but I'm also reading the law. And so I'm just torn that way on that issue.
Okay, yeah, and I mean, it does seem like, because the law is written that way, that it makes sense, but I see what you're saying. So it sounds like we might be close to a place.
Question.
Yeah, good question.
Anyone might be able to answer this, but I guess staff are legal to it. Are we judging, I mean, for the washer thing, are we making a determination that the hearing examiner was reasonable or that staff is reasonable? Because I kind of think they're both reasonable, but they're both saying two different things. So what, is it hearing examiner?
Probably hearing.
Well, counsel should correct us, but I think it's, was there substantial evidence in the record to support the hearing examiner's decision?
Yep.
Okay. I think that's the root of it, but it is on a higher level, like who was more reasonable. Even if they were both reasonable, though, I think that means that you have to, well, to me, I give deference to the hearing examiner, because if the hearing examiner was reasonable, it would suggest it was substantial evidence.
Yeah. That's where I'm leaning to, is to uphold a hearing examiner on everything, to be quite honest, yeah. Helpful.
Yeah. Yeah, that's where I'm leaning too, because I think the hearing examiner, I think that was a reasonable, and so was staff, but why overturn it if we feel like hearing examiner was reasonable? Does anybody want to make a motion? Or do we still have more?
I can try to make a motion. I was going to ask if I could ask counsel to suggest wording for a motion that basically affirms with the exception of the washer, and as to that issue, we uphold the hearing examiner's decision.
Yes, this one's easy. You would just be voting or making a motion to affirm the hearing examiner's decision in full, in lieu of staff's recommendation.
Then I will propose that as a motion to see if there's a second.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Ms. Secretary, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bass?
Aye.
Commissioner Kerpes?
I have to vote no.
Commissioner Topchin?
Aye.
Vice Chair McCafferty?
Aye.
And Chair Goldman?
Aye. Motion passes. If the parties have any further questions, you can reach the Rent Stabilization Division at 323-848-6450 or by email at rsd@weho.org, or you may request an in-person appointment online at weho.org under the services menu. And for the parties who joined us through Zoom, you will now be placed back into the waiting room. If you would like to watch the rest of the meeting, you may find your options to do so at weho.org/WehoTV.
Thank you.
Okay, so we're now gonna, does anybody, let's see, what time is it? Well, does anybody need a break, or do we want to go to the second appeal and then maybe take a break after that? Okay. All right, so we're now going to move to our second appeal of the evening. Okay, so we'll read the instructions. Again, so first we're going to have a legal counsel, and then the appellant will speak first. You'll have 5 minutes to provide your oral argument. You have the option of dividing your 5 minutes into 2 segments, and you may use part of your 5 minutes to state your case and part of your 5 minutes for a rebuttal. And the respondent, you'll speak second. You will have 1 5-minute segment to state your case on the appeal subject. And when it's time for you to speak, please state your name and city of residence for the record. The appellant will state how you would like to divide your time, if at all, and then proceed with your comments. And since the time is limited, it's very important to stay on topic. So the only information that you should be sharing should be on the appeal topic. New evidence cannot be considered by the commission, and you may only discuss issues that were raised at the hearing or evidence submitted to the hearing examiner. So legal counsel, may we have the staff report?
You may. Thank you, Chair, and I appreciate everyone saying staff was reasonable in our last case. Very nice of you. So we are moving to D4642 CD1 at 915 North Spalding Avenue. In this case, the tenant filed for a rent reduction in 2022. In that case, the hearing examiner found both tenant-specific and common area rent reductions. Common area reductions were $50 in total. Tenant-specific were $145 in total. The reasonings are in your staff report, but there are 8 issues between those two. In 2025, the landlord filed a compliance determination request. The hearing examiner in that matter granted restoration of rent in the amount of $34. $20 was for the common area garage sewage pipe issue, and then $14 for a patio screen door issue. In this case, the tenant went ahead and did work herself because the landlord had not done so as to the unit paint and the unit flooring. Due to that, the tenant sought reimbursement for the costs related to those 2 issues. The hearing officer awarded a reduced amount in that situation. The hearing officer also ordered that the monthly rent reductions for the interior paint and the unit flooring would remain in place until the landlord had reimbursed the amount ordered. Tenant has appealed that decision, stating that the decision is clearly in error and is not reasonably supported by the findings or evidence in the record. And so the questions before the commission tonight are fourfold. 1, is there substantial evidence in the record related to the garage sewage issue? 2, is there substantial evidence in the record related to the screen door? 3, is there substantial evidence related to the unit paint and floor reimbursement issue? And then 4, is there substantial evidence in the record regarding the doorbell sales tax? Staff believes that the hearing examiner was correct and that there is substantial evidence in the record to support each of those issues. I will explain those issues. Garage sewage pipes, the evidence supported that the landlord complied with this, providing invoices and testimony. Patio screen door, same reasons. The unit paint and flooring reimbursement, I'm sure we'll have some discussion on, but the municipal code authorizes reimbursement in situations where the landlord fails to do the ordered repairs, but those have to be reasonable and supported by credible supporting documentation. The hearing officer reviewed the tenant's receipts, invoices, and other documents and found that some were related to the actual work done, but some were unrelated or did not fall within costs that can be reimbursed by the code. Some of those issues were that they were either unsupported, they were confusing documentation. Some of the work, there were too many items ordered, and so only what could actually be installed could be reimbursed. And then in this situation, there were quite a few payments to multiple contractors to fix what prior contractors had done. And so the hearing officer found, and staff agrees, that that is not a reimbursement that's allowed under our municipal code. And then lastly, the doorbell sales tax. The parties agreed that the tenant would be reimbursed $49.99 for the doorbell, and staff checked the records on that and confirmed that that was the amount that they agreed to. Tenant has stated that they should be paid back $49.99 plus sales tax, but staff believes that the hearing officer correctly set it at $49.99 based on the hearing record. And so based on that, that concludes my report, and I'm available for questions. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have any questions from commissioners? Vice Chair.
So for this one, both with like the sales tax issue and the reimbursement issue, I'm not going to form this as a question, but you'll get what I'm saying. So we have the evidence that we have, and so let's say that evidence saying they paid sales tax, or the evidence like a clear receipt or ledger from one of these contractors exists. Like, how does that work tonight? If we say like we don't have the evidence for it right now, how would someone like submit it later?
They would not.
It gets done. There's no way for them to submit it later, or you have to like have a new appeal.
No, this is the appeal of that decision.
Okay, so they had their chance to submit. So this is all we've got, is this evidence here?
That's correct.
Fabulous. Glad I asked. Thank you.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, so we will now move on to the oral arguments. So we will have our appellant come up, Andrea Morris. Please state your name and city of residence, and how you would like to divide your time.
My name is Andrea Morse, M-O-R-S-E. I live in the city of West Hollywood.
Oh, yeah, it's hard to hear you with the mic.
Is that better?
Yes, that's better.
How's that? Okay.
Yeah, that's better. And yeah, your name, and then also how you would like to divide your time.
My name is Andrea Morse. I live at 915 North Spalding Avenue, number 3, West Hollywood. I'd like to split my time. I'm going to try to go maybe like 3 minutes and maybe 2 minutes if I need to, give or take-ish.
Okay, yeah, you can
that
always
okay?
change. We'll just have the secretary will let you know when it's 3 minutes, and then you can decide.
Okay. So let me just organize my paper quickly here. Okay. First, I'm just going to let you know that some of these things I was appealing, they are nominal. They're not the main focal. My main focal today, and good afternoon, sorry, commissioners, and thank you for hearing me today on my appeal. You have the opportunity today to do more than decide my individual case. You have the opportunity to reinforce that landlords, just like tenants, must be held accountable for meeting their legal obligations. If a tenant fails to pay rent, there are immediate and serious consequences. But when a landlord repeatedly fails to perform required maintenance, even after a rent reduction has been ordered, what are the meaningful consequences? Since Drake took over our management building in June of 2019, I have repeatedly requested that required maintenance in my unit be completed. After years of unsuccessful requests, I filed for a rent reduction in November of 21. The hearing was held in January of 22, and a decision was rendered in May of 22. Even after I was awarded a rent reduction because of the landlord's failure to perform required maintenance, they still did not make the necessary repairs. The financial consequence apparently was not enough to compel compliance. The landlord chose to absorb the rent reduction rather than perform the work they were required to perform. I continued giving them the opportunity to complete the work and made clear that if they did not, I would eventually have no choice but to do it myself. They still did not do it. Eventually, I had no reasonable alternative. I began the process myself in 2024, completed the work in 25, and paid the expenses out of my own pocket. On November 7th, the landlord filed for a compliance determination and attempted to claim that they had completed and paid for the maintenance and work by themselves. But they did not. I did. I paid for it. The compliance determination was issued on the April 29th of 26, and this appeal is on the appeal was on May 13th. The painting my unit demonstrates the consequences of the years of delay. I was already due to have my unit painted before Drake took over management in 2019. Had they fulfilled the obligation when required, I would now be approaching the next 4-year painting cycle. So we're looking at almost 7 years now that I have had to wait to now be able to get to my next year, which is coming again. So with that being said, there's another part of the history that demonstrates the imbalance I'm asking you to consider, please. And that is that after I was awarded my rent reduction, the landlord attempted to evict me, claiming I had failed to pay my rent in full. They insisted that my rent reduction was only $105 when it was actually $195. I was then forced to attend.
3-minute mark.
I'm sorry?
That's your 3 minutes, so you can keep going,
let me just finish this part.
Okay.
I was then forced to have to go to mediation, in which case they still refused to acknowledge it. How about that contrast? When the landlord believed I had failed to meet my financial obligation, they pursued eviction. But when they failed year after year to meet their maintenance obligations, I was left living with conditions, fighting for repairs, attending hearings and mediation, and ultimately paying to do the work myself. I'll hold. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. You can stay for a minute. We might have some questions. Do we have commissioner questions? Okay. Seeing none, so you may take your seat.
Thank you.
All right. And so we will now have the rebuttal, the respondent. So George Velasquez. And state your name, city of residence, and you will have 5 minutes.
Great. Good evening, George Velasquez, City of West Hollywood. I'm here on behalf of management company Drake Real Estate Group and the ownership group John and Susan Giroux Trust for 915 Spalding Avenue, West Hollywood, California 90046. First, I want to thank you for your time and for the careful consideration you have given to this matter. On behalf of ownership and management, we appreciate this commission's thorough review of the record, the evidence presented, and the compliance determination decision. We respectfully request that the commission affirm the hearing examiner's determination. The tenant brings up a point to where she believes she was not, has received any reimbursement or anything. We've been more than willing to give this reimbursement, but here we are waiting on this decision to be made. So again, we remain committed to giving the reimbursement that's been affirmed on that decision, and we hope that you continue to reaffirm that decision. That's it.
Okay. Any questions from commissioners? Vice Chair.
To me, it's pretty unusual that a tenant would have to take up this heavy of a lift for a maintenance repair. Replacing the floors and painting is a lot. Why didn't you guys do it as the landlord and the team?
I can't really ask to that because this happened prior to my actual employment with this company. It just seemed like this fell through the cracks.
Okay, thanks.
Any other questions? Okay, seeing none, so you may take your seat.
Thank you.
Okay, so we will now move on to commission deliberation. Yes, sorry. So the tenant now has your time for rebuttal, so if you want to come back up, you have the rest of your time for the rebuttal. And Ms. Secretary, can you tell them how much time is left?
1 minute and 35.
I'm sorry, how much?
Sorry, you have about 2 minutes.
Oh, okay. Okay, hold on. Let me put my papers down. So first of all, this is an ongoing issue, and they've had many, the property management company has had many, Mr. Vasquez over here, the turnover's a lot. So basically what I'm trying to say is that it doesn't surprise me he doesn't know, but I can tell you that there is documentation, letter after letter, and email after email. The point that I want to make here is that this is why your decision is so important today, because you not only have the opportunity to change how landlords are being held accountable, but you're changing the way and the path for other people and tenants like myself who will not have to sit and go through all this over and over again, between having to fight for what we pay rent to be able to receive these simple amenities, and we don't get them. And then we have people like that, our landlord, who just doesn't want to do the work. And it would be really great if you guys can today make that difference for not only my case, but the standard of accountability landlords are expected to meet. 7 years is far too long for a tenant to have to fight for required maintenance and fair reimbursement. I respectfully ask that you consider the years of delay, the repeated opportunities the landlord was given to comply, the fact that even rent reduction did not result in compliance, and the financial burden that was ultimately shifted onto me. For those reasons, I respectfully ask the commission
Yeah, that's
grant
your
my
time.
appeal, and thank you so much.
Thank
I
you.
appreciate it.
Okay, so we will now move on to commission deliberation. Does anyone want to kick us off? Questions? Commissioner Karpis.
So I've never seen a case like that. What's determined, or how is it determined when a tenant can take it upon themselves to get reimbursed for something like a reduction in services, where we can't force landlords to do anything, but
Yes, it's in our municipal code, 1756-010. If you'll bear with me, we can go there together.
and is it on everything or just certain?
No, it's only on certain items.
Okay.
1756-010G. All right. So if a hearing examiner issues an order and they have not performed the work by the decision within 3 months of the date of the hearing examiner's decision, or if appealed the commission's resolution, the tenant may perform maintenance, provided that the tenant gives 30 days notice of their intent to provide maintenance, provided that such performance is reasonable. And so, you know, I hate hypotheticals here. I don't think doing a roof repair would be reasonable, but interior painting, flooring, potentially, you know, can be. So that it doesn't list out the items, so you actually can do those, but it is 3 months, and then you have to give 30 days notice, so it's 4 months from the date of either the resolution of the commission or the decision. So that's the operative code that allows the tenant to perform this act, and then the quality of the documentation is through our regulations. It has to be reasonable, it has to be credible, it has to be related to the actual repairs. That's through our regulations.
To follow that through with the process, then the landlord pays that back by reductions in rent over a period of time?
Correct.
Until the, I guess, the amount that has already been ordered is reaches the amount that was paid out?
Yeah, so in a perfect world, if I had to replace my window coverings and it was $500 and they never did it, I went to the store, did that myself, submitted the receipts, they paid me back, that's the time they would file for a compliance determination on that issue.
I see. So you're getting you're getting the reduction the entire time, but once you fix it,
Until they pay you back.
Until they pay, yes, so you're getting a reduction the entire time, but then you fix it, and then you're going to get a reduction until they've paid you back for the fix. Okay.
Correct, and that mechanism is also in that same municipal code towards the end that I read. They're precluded from restoring the rent to the former level until the tenant has been reimbursed for the costs in performing the maintenance, including but not limited to reasonable financing costs. So I guess you could go to a bank and get a loan for this.
And then it's determined by a hearing examiner, or I guess the compliance determination would determine whether if it was achieved or not. And in this case, it was achieved, but the receipts didn't, there was questionable, they didn't find all the receipts reasonable.
That is correct. And I believe the hearing examiner's decision notes the actual regulations. I can look at those, but I think there's two that they cited to as to why not all of the invoices and receipts were reimbursable in this situation.
Did I read correctly that they also judged it on the quality of the work? There were spots on the wall, or did I misread that? Was that the problem with the painting prior to? That the paints didn't blend in?
Remember that, but you may be correct if you, are you talking?
Well, I would have a problem with if they were judging the quality of the work and not the receipts, or I'd wonder how they go about doing that. But so that's what I guess I want to clarify. Does anyone else remember what I'm referring to?
It seems like because they were fixing errors from previous contractors.
Right? Oh, the new contractors were fixing errors.
Yes, I think that's what it was, because it wasn't. Can correct me, legal counsel, because it wasn't just one repair. They're going back and fixing, and is that what they determined was unreasonable?
That is correct. There were 4 or 5 contractors. Some of them either did poor work or some of them didn't complete the work. And so there were duplications in work. Obviously, you have to pay for an assessment each time. So some of those were taken out because there were so many people involved. And that was found not to fit within the municipal codes reasonably necessary to perform the work ordered under that decision. You're welcome.
Any other questions or?
No, just Mr. Martz, the examiner's findings of that 8,375.06 is what we're saying. It's a reasonable. It doesn't have to be the exact amount of the dollar amount that the tenant spent on the repairs and fixing the place, even if there are invoices. So the examiner still can decide what's would consider reasonable.
That is correct.
And what you explained before and now also, so that the examiner actually went through all these invoices and receipts.
That is correct, and staff also verified the hearing examiner's conclusions as to which receipts went where, that some of, like on the flooring, there were multiple boxes purchased, but only certain amounts were actually necessary, so there was an overpurchase, so they subtracted out what couldn't be used, those type of things, so we went through all of those.
So in this case, the compliance determination, the request for compliance determination can only apply when this 8375.6, the amount has been completely reimbursed to the tenant.
That is correct. That's in the actual compliance determination order. The 2 rent reductions for paint and for flooring remain in place until such time that they are reimbursed in full.
Okay. All right. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
I have one question, just because and a comment as well. I feel like this is a tough case because we have a tenant who really went through a lot to get repairs, and actually I think it was an interesting case because it educated me about steps that tenants can take when the rent reduction is not enough. And we've heard that before in other decisions up here. We can authorize rent reductions or approve them, but that doesn't mean that the landlord makes the repairs. They just accept the hit. And I guess the crux of it was, for me tonight, that the reimbursement request included things that couldn't be compensated. And it was almost to the tune of close to 10,000. I mean, I think it was like 18,000 was the submitted request and 8,000 was the approved. So somewhere in there, it was quite a delta, and staff, I guess, has gone through there and verified the hearing examiner's exclusion. We really didn't hear a lot of testimony that analysis was wrong. Nobody really said, here's why it's wrong. It's a large number, but I guess based on the record that we have right now, I'm inclined to go with staff's recommendation, even though that sounds like a tough rub. I don't know what happened with all those contractors and eating up 10,000 that couldn't be recouped. But what I would say is that I really hope that if we do affirm tonight, that the property management company and Mr. Velasquez really follow through as best they can to make sure that they do what they said they were going to do tonight, which is comply with whatever is the result, and that they try to make an effort with this tenant who's clearly gone through it for whatever reasons, and that they try to work well with each other moving forward if there's an affirmance tonight, because I'm kind of inclined to affirm, even though I feel like it's a bad rub for the tenant.
Okay, thank you. Any Commissioner Bass, Commissioner Topchin, what are you feeling?
This is a deliberation part, right?
Yeah.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Just simply, I'm satisfied with what is presented by staff's report. I clearly, I have to rely on the recommendation and the legal counsel's explanation that the hearing examiner went through all these invoices and receipts in order to determine what would be the amount of the reasonable amount for the reimbursement, because the law doesn't really, not really, but the law doesn't require to reimburse everything, each and every dollar that's spent by the tenant. The tenant submitted over $18,000 expenditure for the work that was done. As long as the hearing examiner reasonably concluded what had to be reimbursed, and then we should be fine with it. So I believe that over $8,000 reimbursement, to be exact, $8,375.06, will be considered reasonable reimbursement for the work that was done by the tenant. And yeah, this was kind of an unusual, I think, case, an appeal. I don't remember when was the last time we have a similar case before us, but I'm in agreement with staff's recommendation, and I don't really see anything that would suggest that we should reverse or send back this case. And we heard a lot from the tenant regarding the landlord's accountability. I think this case represents the landlord was held accountable for what was not done here, and by the fact that the examiner is ordering to pay back this $8,375. So I'm in agreement, and I'm going to support staff's recommendation. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Thank you. All right. Vice Chair or Commissioner Bass? You want to let us know where you're standing?
I basically agree. Two points I think might help digesting this one. It's like page 502 and the blue numbers at the top of the page. It breaks down that it's over $10,000 in quoted painting labor. To me, I understand how that is a bit unreasonable for an apartment. And again, it's because of like multiple contractors, and then some other smaller things like a TV and stuff. So I agree that what the staff and the hearing examiner are saying are unreasonable and not approving those charges. However, for just the record, I don't love that it got to this point. That's really bad. To say that it fell through the cracks is pretty unacceptable to me. First, it's, you buy a building, a corporation buys a building or a property management company buys a building, you're doing business in here, you need to understand the law. You don't understand the law, then there's, a request for a hearing examiner, determination. Then there's this appeal, like the determination, and then 4 months after the decision, like that's a lot of time for something as basic as property maintenance to fall through the cracks. Like this is a habitability issue. Again, I affirm it, and I think this will get wrapped up, but my message to the landlord and the property management company is, do better, basically, for that. So that's all I have to say on this one.
Thank you for that, Vice Chair. Commissioner Bass?
Yes, thank you, Vice Chair. That kind of helped me come to a position on it because I'm struggling with it as well, and I think you kind of encapsulated what I was churning, so I would say ditto. And thanks for giving me the easy card out, but I couldn't put it into words and was trying to grasp that, but thank you.
That was very well said. I feel similarly that agree with staff, but it is really unfortunate that this got this far. The other thing I see in there is it looks like there are a lot of other issues that unfortunately couldn't be considered because they weren't part of the original filing, so the tenant still can file and have those issues examined as well. So are we feeling like we're Commissioner Kerpes?
Yeah, I'll move to adopt the resolution in affirming the hearing examiner's decision.
Second.
Okay, Ms. Secretary, may we have a roll call, please?
Commissioner Bass?
Aye.
Commissioner Kerpes?
Aye.
Commissioner Rory?
Aye.
Commissioner Topchin?
Aye.
Vice Chair McCafferty?
Aye.
And Chair Goldman?
Aye. So the motion passes. If the parties have any further questions, you can reach the Rent Stabilization Division at 323-848-6450, by email at rsd@weho.org, or you may request an in-person appointment online at weho.org under the Services menu. Okay, and I think at this time, I think it's a good time to take a brief
recess to 8:30?
Yes, let's take a brief recess. We are now on to new business. So our first item of new business is the proposed security deposit interest rate calculation options. Okay, it looks like we have a public comment. We do, wait, okay.
After, I just handed it to you.
Okay, thank you. And then our next item of new business is Assembly Bill 628 and the impact on rent stabilization units, new state habitability requirements.
Chair, if we're under new business item A, that's the
Yeah.
security deposit interest rate discussion?
Yes.
Got it. Are you ready for a staff report on that?
Yes.
All
staff
right.
report.
That one's going to be me. So this is proposed security deposit interest rate calculation options, mouthful, under rent stabilization regulation 4200. This item is being presented as we've had a handful of public comments over the last few years regarding whether the current methodology is the most appropriate and fair to landlords and tenants under rent stabilization regulation 4200. Over the last 6 to 9 months, staff has worked together to come up with alternative options for consideration by the commission. The different options are presented in your staff report. One of the options is to retain the current methodology. And if you do choose that option, you would just direct staff to take no further action on this item at this time. You're always free to bring this back for further discussion down the road should circumstances change. The West Hollywood Municipal Code Section 1732020 requires landlords to pay tenants an annual interest on security deposits at rates determined by yours truly, the Rent Stabilization Commission. The formulas for those interest rates are set forth in the Rent Stabilization Regulations. The Rent Stabilization Commission must announce the rate on or before September 1st of each year. And beginning in 2002, the Regulation 4200 calculated the rate by averaging savings rates at 5 local brick and mortar banks and rounding to the nearest 1/4%. From 2012 to 2021, that formula produced interest rates of 0%. In 2021, following review and recommendation from the Commission, the City Council of West Hollywood amended Regulation 4200 to use an average from 5 online FDIC-insured banks. The current formula is intended to reflect savings products available in the broader banking market beyond brick and mortar. Since that change, the annual rates have ranged from 1.7% in 2022, 5% in 2023 and 2024, and 4.3% in 2025. Landlords have provided public comment that the 5 highest online savings rates used in our current formula may produce a rate higher than the rate available at financial institutions where those landlords ordinarily maintain their funds, and that some of those interest rates selected are not available annually on a regular basis. And so the options available that we have before you, these are what staff has found to be the most reasonable in light of the public comments and Regulation 4200, is to use the current methodology, and that would leave it as is. Alternative number 1, verified deposit adjustment with a 75% floor. You would retain the 5 online bank methodology currently in use. A landlord who elects to keep their funds in a bank that has a lower rate than the rate found with the current methodology could submit to the city documentation that they submit to the tenant as well that would allow them to pay 75% of the current methodology rate, or they can pay the documented rate on their account, whichever is greater. This is modeled based in part on the City of Los Angeles. City of Los Angeles does not provide a floor, so if the interest rate is 4% from the city's methodology, and they have a Bank of America account paying 0.25%, they could actually pay the 0.25%. Based on discussions and our review of city policies, we felt that having that wide of a delta was not the best option, and so we put in the 75% floor. That recognizes that some landlords may not want to move their money year to year, but also provides a fair return on the interest rate to the tenants who have their deposits held by the landlords. Alternative 2, this would change the current methodology from 5 online banks to 4 online banks and 1 local bank. Pretty self-explanatory, but that addresses one of the concerns that some of the landlords may not be tech savvy and may want to bank at a banking institution that they can walk into in the West Hollywood area. Alternative 3 is the same as alternative 2, but instead of using 4 online banks and 1 local bank, it uses 3 online banks and 2 local banks. That just presents a different version for your consideration. The staff report also provides a list and explanation of what other rent control jurisdictions use for their approach to this issue. Los Angeles, Berkeley, San Francisco, Santa Monica, and Oakland. Notably, Oakland does not actually require interest to be paid on the security deposits. One note is that the staff report recommends that the commission may want to clarify the date where staff actually does the research. It's not required that we do it on a specific date, and this may address some accuracy questions. And then separate and apart from your consideration of if you want to keep the methodology on 4200 the same or choose one of the alternatives is an additional policy question for small landlord adjustments. This was brought up by one of the landlords in their public comments and briefly discussed by the commission in the past. But there is the potential for the commission to decide that small landlords should be treated differently than some of the giant landlords that have, dozens and dozens or hundreds or even thousands of properties. Those may be able to absorb a higher interest rate than a small landlord. And so the policy question here is whether that is of interest to the commission. The focus tonight is on whether you want to adjust the actual methodology in one of the alternatives or retain it. And so if the commission does have appetite for the small landlord adjustment, we would recommend that that's not an extensive discussion tonight because staff hasn't analyzed it as much as we have the other items, but we would take direction to bring something back in the future for that. And so if the commission elects to retain the current methodology, there would be no further steps to take, and so we would just go forward as normal. If the commission identifies a preferred alternative, staff would work up that, the actual regulations and the changes to the regulations and next steps in time for the next annual calculation in August 2027. That concludes my report, and I am available for questions.
Thank you.
You are welcome.
Do we have any questions? Commissioner Kerpes.
Just a couple of questions about the parameters. Can you remind us, I believe it was a court case, but can you remind us why we're not able to use things like a 6-month CD or some of those things that are more stable?
Yes, that is a Santa Monica case in their rent control department, and don't 100% hold me to this, but the issue with using like a certificate of deposit is that to get that percentage that it gives back, the money has to be held in place. And tenants come and go, and so it was found to be unfair to the landlord and a potential taking under our Constitution for you to say you have to lock your money up in a CD to get 5%, and then the tenant moves out, but their money's locked up, so you're now telling a landlord to find the money elsewhere. And so that was the concern of the courts in that situation.
And so we weren't able to, or that we or whoever, has there ever been any exploration that the tenant agrees in advance to this, or I mean, I can see the penalty, I can see that, you know, whatever the interest rate is, you get deducted 6 months or so when you take one out early, but couldn't that fall back on or we didn't make the landlord responsible for it?
I would be hesitant to recommend that because it's like in some of our cases where you say, can you agree to something that's illegal? No, that's not here, but a landlord come back and say, well, that sounded good at the time, but it still violates the Santa Monica case, and it would be a risk for the city to go through that approach.
Thank you. And one other question, just is on a policy-wise, how do we justify, you know, there's an argument that small landlords, I don't fully understand it, but that small landlords may need a break versus larger landlords. What would be the policy, or how would we defend the policy if the question were asked in reverse? How we treat deposits from a tenant in a 2-unit building versus how we treat deposits of a tenant in a 60-unit building?
That's a good question for your debate tonight.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Chapchain.
Mr. Martz, so the alternative one is basically what we have currently, right? That's the methodology we currently use. With the
Alternative one creates, yes, you use the same formula, but a landlord could get a 25% reduction by following the steps in alternative one.
Now we're suggesting 75 floor.
Correct.
75%. And the current methodology is the landlord can choose to reimburse the actual percentage, right? Whatever the banks calculated.
Can you repeat
the
your
reimbursement? So the actual amount can be under the current methodology.
The current methodology is the city sets the percentage based on our formula, and the landlord has to pay it.
That percentage, which is 25%.
No, the percentage is the amount we announce every year prior to September 1st, so 4.3% for 2025.
Okay. So, and that applies to the security deposits, the same percentage.
So under alternative one, if a landlord does not want to move their money into the banks that would achieve whatever the city sets that at under the formula, if they're getting only 2%, they can keep it in their 2% bank, and they can provide documentation to the city that their bank does not achieve the city's rates, and that would allow them to get 25% off whatever the rate is that the city sets.
All right. Thank you. And I had the second question, which you replied, Commissioner Corpus's second question about the small landlords, but I guess the other commissioners will have comments. I just want to hear from them. Thank you.
You're welcome.
I was wondering, Council, with the small landlords, was that something we would request staff look into in addition, even if we chose one of these others, or was it we leave it as is and then we also direct staff to look into something for, I'm wondering which combinations, I guess, are on the menu.
Yes, of course. They're all on the menu. You can leave it as is and not have staff explore small landlords. You can leave it as is and direct staff to only do that. You can have staff go with one of the alternatives and prepare the documentation with a small landlord exploration or without a small landlord exploration.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Commissioner Kerr, please.
If we're done with questions and all understand what the policy is now and what our options are in front of us, I would ask that if I could have the floor for a moment to talk about another potential idea to direct staff to look into. But I want to make sure everyone understands what's going on first.
Does anybody have questions before?
Chair, yeah, that's what I was going to say. There is a public comment on the item before you deliberate.
Okay, then, so we'll do public comment now. We have Kathy Blavis. Please state your name and city of residence, and you'll have 3 minutes.
Hi, good evening. Kathy Blavis, City of West Hollywood. I am a small, I have a triplex in West Hollywood. I have 2 tenants. So I would love you to consider the idea of that calculation. I can understand why larger apartment buildings would not want to do that. It's a lot of paperwork, I would imagine, and it's a lot more involved. I have 2 tenants, so it would be very simple for me to figure that out. Short of your considering that, I would also be in favor of the alternative one, especially now that it has the additional option to adjust the rate according to what I'm actually getting from my bank. I don't do online banking for my security deposits. I guess I kind of believe in the model of shopping local, so I use a local bank. But again, if it comes to one or the other, I would go with option 1. But if there's a way to also add into that the option for small duplex or triplex owners, I think that would be a great alternative. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Okay, so we'll now move on to deliberations. Unless anybody has further questions for council, then we'll let Commissioner Karpies go ahead. Any more clarifying questions? Okay, seeing none, go ahead.
I know we're not
Commissioner
supposed
Karpies.
to going back and forth with the audience, but I'm not understanding what is it that would be the, oh, sorry. I'm not understanding what is it that would be the alternative for the smaller landlords? What, like?
I think staff would look into that. So we would just be directing them to come up with something. Right? Is
Just
that
to randomly come up with something?
Yeah, right? Because we don't know yet. You all have to determine.
Yes, just like we came up with options for changing the methodology under 4200, we would present several options that could be chosen for small landlords. We didn't feel it was worth the time to do both if there was an appetite from the commission to even approach that idea.
So I'd like to throw just another idea out on the table. So I'm going to read from the script for a little bit, and you just cut me off if I go too long. I want to begin by thanking staff for the thoughtful work reflected in tonight's report. This was an issue near and dear to my heart back in 2020 when I was starting to get high interest rates for my own savings accounts, but yet my interest rate was still 0% from the city. And so the commission at the time was interested in rediscussing the issue, and we came to the conclusion that 5 banks, online banks, made a huge difference. Obviously, you can look at the numbers. But then we did start, I was shocked, I think in 2023 maybe, or 2024, when the interest rate seemed so high. And again, I was competing with all my banks, or looking around for all my banks. I couldn't get that interest rate. So when landlords started coming to us and saying that this was an issue, I do feel responsible for trying to fix it, because I don't want landlords to be paying more than what they should be. They shouldn't be paying out of their pocket. But I also don't think that they should just get a free ride in terms of they do select the banks that they work with, just like they decide whether to charge a deposit or not. So I agree with staff that the current methodology deserves review. Where I differ is on what I believe the underlying problem is, and therefore what the appropriate solution is. The current regulation requires the city to certify or identify the 5 highest qualifying savings accounts, APYs, offered by online FDIC-insured banks, average those rates, and then use that calculation to establish the city's annual security deposit rate. We are using the same formula in these. Staff currently identifies those rates and announces them each September, and we're using that same formula basically in the staff report or the staff options. I think the fundamental problem is that we're attempting to establish a measurable annual return on money excuse me, held throughout an entire year by looking at savings account rates at essentially one point in time. As we all know, rates go up and down on a daily basis. So that's our first flaw, is that we're only using one date. Interest rates can rise and fall. Merely changing what banks we're looking at or will only do the same thing. We will make it a wider variety, whatever, but we're still only going to be looking at one day throughout the entire year. So now it comes to how do we address that? And I think staff has taken a lot of time to think this through and try to put some safeguards in there. But I do not agree with artificially lowering the rent or lowering the interest rate simply to say what's fair or what is more fair. To me, fairness is not meeting in the middle. That's a compromise, but that doesn't necessarily mean it's fair. Fair is making sure that we are setting a policy that doesn't necessarily mean choosing a number halfway between what the landlords would prefer to pay and what tenants would prefer to receive. A security deposit remains the tenant's money while the landlord holds on to it. The landlord possesses the money as security for the tenancy, but the economic value of those funds still belong to the tenant. Our objective should be to identify a reasonable rate of return that the tenant's money could have earned while it was being held, without requiring a landlord to pay an artificially high rent return for the landlord's own funds. That means a tenant should not receive an artificially inflated return, just as they should not receive an artificially deflated amount. The landlord should not be charged anything that's not reasonable to pay back to the tenant. So the methodology that I'm proposing is that we look at a benchmark that is stable and safeguarded. And so this leads me to propose a 2 benchmark system with the lower of the 2 measurements establishing the annual rate. And what I would suggest, and then this will require staff to research and come back to us and make some decisions about whether they even have the staff capacity to do this, or if we would need to narrow it down, but I don't think what I'm proposing is too difficult. First of all is maintaining the 5 online bank methodology that we're using. We want to find the 5 highest interest rates, again, following the standards that they have been using in the past. If they know it's just an artificial, or if they know it's just a temporary interest rate hike, they're not going to, for promotion, they're not going to choose that one. But yet we don't always know which ones are promotions or not. So still use that 5 bank average, but then also look at but do it 4 times a year. So each quarter, January, April, July, and October, and then take those 4 averages and make it for the entire year. That gives you a better idea of what it is year-round. It's going to catch some of the spikes, it's going to catch some of the lows. And then because it is still, we're just choosing 4 moments in time, there's no stability to that really, but it is better than the situation we have. There's something called the 1-month treasury securities, which landlords would not be able to invest money in this. But I'm using this as a benchmark that is standard practice across the industry that's taken like 260 days of the year. It's recorded and it's all public. Landlords could look it up online. But we would take that number, that average for the year, and compare it to the average of the 5 highest banks over the 4 quarters, and we would use that as the safeguard is whichever one is lower of those 2 numbers, because the Fed's number is going to be a consistent number throughout the year. It's going to slowly rise, it's going to slowly decrease, unlike the interest rates that can spike and go lower. This sounds very complicated, but really it's not, because to the landlord and tenant, it'll be the same exact process that we currently use. Instead of we will still announce the number, but staff will 4 times a year choose or figure out what the average is 4 times a year, and then they can just simply look at the records online for the Fed's Treasury note, what it's averaged as, and compare those 2 numbers and take the lower number, and that's the same number we would announce. And if you look at, I did some research on the last 3 or 4 years, basically it comes out to about the same. There are in years 2022, 2023, and 2025 a slight decrease, which I think the landlords that we heard that were saying that it's too much, that would address some of their concerns. it oddly did spike still in 2024. We charged a 5% increase, or 5% rent interest rate. The 1-month treasury was 5.27. The average, if I took across 4 quarters of the year, was about 5.28%. Those are not exactly scientific numbers because they were just based upon, in retrospect, looking at what you could see, what was advertised as interest rates. So there was a 0.25% increase higher than what we would have charged in 2024. But otherwise, it just makes more sense to me to spread those numbers out over the year and use a stable benchmark by the feds to compare it to make sure that even under our new system, we're not going too high or going too low. Because at the end of the day, like, I definitely want to entertain this conversation, but I'm not interested in having this conversation to talk about because a landlord didn't want to change banks. They can bank wherever they want to bank in their business of rental. They can put their rental money wherever they want to put it. But when it comes to the tenant's money, that needs to be at a reasonable rate of return, regardless of whether you're tech savvy or not, because that's the tenant's money. That's how I very strongly feel. So that's kind of, I know, I hope to have like slides and stuff. I don't have that, but that's kind of where I'm thinking is, at least along those lines, is pulling away from just a single day, and I'll open it up for questions and other comments.
Chair, if I may, Commissioner Kirpies, you're not going to like this, but that is not an agendized item, so we can't discuss your idea here. I would say even if we could, staff hasn't analyzed that for any legal ramifications, and one thing that we've been clear about is that any impact on staff, extra work, is going to be a tough sell to the City Council and would be difficult for staff to support. So we can't have a discussion on an item that wasn't agendized, and that option was not one of them. So I don't know how the chair, you want to address that, but it's not something we can continue to go through.
I have a question.
Okay, yeah.
So my question then is, so I don't have a problem tabling it to future, because I do think I think more people need to be here, first of all. I think that I've been a little disappointed that there aren't more people here, especially landlords that seem to come here to complain before. I do appreciate the people who are here, but I just think that we could have done a better job at advertising it. But back to the point, what's on the agenda is to give direction to staff to explore different options. And so that's what this would be, is to ask you to go back. It wouldn't be a requirement to change the policy, but I would like, either at this meeting or the next meeting, I'll get a majority, we'll direct you to look at other options. But it wasn't intending to try to hide it from the public or not be on the Brown Act. But I still think that under a normal read of the Brown Act, this would still apply because it's very specific to this subject. But
Well, yeah, I mean, I think we have to, whatever we direct staff, I think we need to choose from what has been presented here.
I mean, the discussion tonight is about the options presented. If you hate all of them and would like to explore Commissioner Kirby's idea, you can direct staff to bring that back. It certainly wouldn't be at the next meeting, but that is an option if there's appetite for that. But staff did go through and spend a lot of time on the options presented here tonight.
Okay, so we just wouldn't discuss your option. We would say if none of the options appeal to us, maybe we can go back and direct staff to explore some more, and then we can have another conversation.
That's certainly one option.
Okay. Commissioner Topchain?
Thank you, Chair. Just keep it simple. I am in favor to keep everything as is. I believe that this current methodology is working. It's simple, it's transparent, and it's clear, and I don't think it's excessive, reasonable, and all these words. I will be in favor of keeping the methodology as is. Thank you. And thank you, Commissioner Kirby, for obviously that suggestion.
Okay. Commissioner Bass?
I'm generally inclined to stay where we're at, but I did have one question, and that is, how much time does it take staff to compile the number on an annual basis? In general, to find those 5 banks and come up with that?
Gloria?
Where I'm going with this is because it varies on a monthly basis. I'm wondering if we could do just, and if that's the letter we got was that it changes on a monthly basis. I don't bank there, but could we look that number up on a monthly basis and just do it 12 times and come up with it would be the same process, but averaged. It would actually get you the correct rate.
So is your question one time, like August 15th, we would try to look back at what the 5 banks were for each of the preceding 12 months? Or are you saying should staff every month on the 15th write down?
I don't know how that would actually work because I don't know this, but
so
sure.
I've analyzed both of those. If there is not a great way, because right now we say to use bankrate.com, there's not a history button to look at what those banks were. So if it was, please look on August 15th at the 12 preceding months and average those, the data is not really there to do that. If the request is to have staff on the 15th of every month write down in a notebook what those are, that can be done, but that is a lot more staff work. Because you're asking someone to do something every month. I know it doesn't sound like a lot, but it would be. If there's appetite for that, we can bring something back for discussion, but I would ask commissioners or recommend look at the changes. Interest rates on security deposits are generally driven by the interest rates charged by the feds. And as you've seen over the last number of years, those don't change a lot every year. They go up by a quarter point, down by a quarter point, maybe half point. And so the changes that you're going to see on a year-to-year basis by attempting to do this are not going to be, in my mind, significant enough for the extra work that's involved. If I could see doing it twice a year, you're capturing kind of, I could see that, but a 12-month rolling basis, I don't think you're going to see as much of a change as you think is going to be captured.
Okay.
Long answer, sorry.
Anyone else want to take a stab at where they stand? Commissioner Rory?
This one was this was something that we first started talking about when I was chair, so it's been a bit since we last talked about it. So I'm hopeful that we can try to work within the framework of the options we're discussing tonight and move it forward, ideally, to resolution this year. I know for everyone at home, this wouldn't happen until at least a year from now, is my understanding. So nothing we talk about tonight is going to change this year in 2026 or the beginning of next. These are very forward-looking discussions, just for everyone to keep in mind. And there's an old saying, if it's not broken, don't try to fix it. And that's a good saying. You don't live and die by that. But I do think in general, West Hollywood has a really admirable policy of trying to maximize interest rates on security deposits, which interest does not belong to the tenant or to the landlord. So it should go to the tenant in full. And that's a great policy. And we, in fact, go so far as to have a methodology that maximizes that interest rate calculus by averaging online banks at this point. The problem, the other saying that you'll encounter in life is you only want to fix what's actually broken. You don't need to fix the other parts that aren't working. So the only issue that we had previous discussions, we got letters in the record, and I've heard it myself, which is sometimes these online rates aren't really what the landlord is earning in interest. And you've got this delta situation where the rate is a certain number, but the actual interest that the landlord earned was less than what the full rate was. And landlords do have to come out of pocket on some level to make up that difference. And just as it's not the landlord's interest to do with what he or she pleases, the same fairness argument applies, which is why is the landlord having to come out of pocket for an interest that it never received? So that was the issue that we were trying to address, and that's what led to these options tonight. My thinking is that we should stick with the current program, but we could do an alternative for smaller landlords. And I do think that lumping smaller landlords in with large conglomerate corporations is a huge mistake. I think there's a vast, vast difference between the two. And that if we wanted to create an alternative where smaller landlords have the option of just paying the tenant what they actually received, is a worthwhile endeavor to try to get to. How we get there could be many different ways. We've got this like option 1, 75% cap. Option 2, incorporate the local bank aspect of it all. I'm open to flexibility on that. I just think that at the end of the day, we keep the program mostly where it's at, but we have an alternative for smaller landlords. And my proposed alternative would basically be something that allows the smaller landlords to, at the end of the day, pay what they actually received in interest. I do think we have to have some sort of a balance where they don't just go to the smallest bank possible and pay 0.1%, but I also, I personally am sympathetic to smaller landlords who don't do online banking, and that's not a possibility for them. They don't do that. So if we wanted to incorporate a local bank rate that they could use, I think the city council might be interested in that as well, because it's kind of supporting small, local businesses, local banks, local economy. So I'm open to methodology. I guess the alternative ones, and then I'll stop. The alternative one, even if we were to adopt that just for smaller landlords, there's a potential where it's not fixing the problem, because we have that 75% cap. So the example tonight was something like if the published rate is 5%, but the landlord goes with the local bank and only gets 2% for the year, they still have to come out of pocket to make it up to the 4%, because, or roughly, right? 75% of 5 is around 4. So I hope that math is right. It's close, 80%. So I just don't like the idea, like we're doing all this work to solve a potential issue, and then we're still falling short with the 75% cap. I like the idea of an exception only for smaller landlords. I just would love to be able to work it in that at the end of the day, whatever they actually paid or received in interest is what they're supposed to pay out. And they don't have a delta problem. But that might not be possible. That's just kind of the steps of my thinking.
Thank you. Yeah, Vice Chair.
Does staff have a recommendation for what they recommend to keep it as is, but then also give us alternatives, or do they have one that they like the best? It's like a cooler way to say that.
We do not. We brought this purely because there was interest from the commission and from the public.
My inclination is to keep the current methodology, and then for the smaller landlords, the money's the same, so I wouldn't vote to inquire about that.
All right. So it sounds like we have a lot of different opinions on things here. Trying to think how we can move forward.
What are your thoughts?
So my thinking is I would be okay leaving it as is and then just directing staff to explore maybe some options for smaller landlords and come back with that. But yeah, all of us seem to have a little bit of a different permutation of this, and we have to, Commissioner Kirby's.
I just, maybe if somebody could give me an example of what I mean, other than, are we just talking about giving them a break? Because I'm absolutely, whether it's big or little, I'm against that. But if you have an idea that's like outside the box, that somehow little landlords can get something differently, but that's not going to hurt the tenants, then I'm all for exploring that. But
Well, I think that's what we would direct staff to come up with and come back with us, right? Because I don't think, we don't know that yet. So we would just say, hey, come back to us and we'll go over that again, and we'll maybe choose if that's the way to go.
Can we, Chair, can we first decide on the methodology, what the commission would vote on, or which methodology we use? And then maybe the next would be to, I don't know if it's a motion or something, whether we want to direct staff to look into the small landlord model, or, maybe we don't want that. Maybe the commission will not recommend that.
Yeah, I
so
guess
I'm actually fully support what the Vice Chair said, so I'm fine with the current methodology without even considering the small landlord option. So I'm suggesting let's just vote on the methodology, and then
But who would the methodology apply to? You're going to apply for everyone?
Is, leave everything as is.
Yeah, he's saying leave it as is.
Even for large conglomerations to get a...
Just the way it was as of now, as of today.
Yeah.
Which is
So I guess who has the appetite to leave it as is? So we could vote on that and see who wants to leave it.
Oh, okay.
Yeah,
Like
who wants to
option
leave it
one
as,
is no change.
Yeah. So let's see who.
I was
thinking
you were saying you wanted to discuss the methodology first, which made me think you were talking about an alternative to the status quo.
No, I was saying is just let's decide whether we want to leave it as is, no change, and if we want to change anything, then that would include the small landlord alternative for the small landlords, and the staff has to come back. But my recommendation would be just basically leave it as is, and it seems like the majority of the commission is suggesting to leave the methodology as it is now. But we just need to give direction on that to staff, whether we're going to leave it as is or we're going to choose another methodology. But it seems like these 4 commissioners are saying that should stay as is.
Yeah.
So would you support, you're thinking like two votes. The first vote is leave it as is, see how we land on that. If that weren't to pass, maybe there's like an alternative to leaving as is that we would vote on, maybe like the smaller landlord option.
Although, if we vote to leave it as is, right, then that's
over.
That's
It's
over,
over.
and
It's
that's
over.
what stands. So, which we could do, because if the majority is saying that's what we want to do, then that would stand. Or we could decide, do we want to leave it as is and then amend? Although, do we need legal counsel? Do we need a motion on this?
Yes, so you're voting if you want to explore any of the alternatives or leave as is, that's one. And then what it sounds like is after that vote, you would vote whether you want staff to come back with a small landlord exploration discussion. That's a separate vote and motion. So,
Okay. So we could do both of those.
correct.
Okay. Yeah, so if someone wants to make a motion.
I'd like to make a motion to keep the methodology as is and no change at this time.
I'll second.
Okay, can we have a roll call?
Commissioner Bass?
No.
Commissioner Kerpes?
yes,
Commissioner Rory?
No.
Commissioner Topchin?
Aye. Yes.
Vice Chair McCafferty,
Aye.
Chair Goldman.
Aye. So the motion passes. Okay, so then if we want to make a second motion to direct staff then to go back and give us additional recommendations for smaller landlords, then we can do that if someone wants to make that
I
motion.
move that we close discussion on this item, take no action, and if in the future someone wants to bring this back, a majority of the commission can bring it back for discussion. But right now, I move to end all debate on it, if that's a real motion.
That's fine. We don't need to add the majority, bring it back at a later date.
'Cause that's
anytime they can
standard,
do that.
okay.
But yeah, everything else is fine.
Second.
Okay, may we have a roll call?
Commissioner Bass,
No.
Commissioner Kerpes,
Yes.
Commissioner Rory,
No.
Commissioner Topchin,
Yes.
Vice Chair McCafferty,
Yes.
and Chair Goldman.
Yes. So the motion passes. So now we can move on to our next item of new business, item 9B. And our next item is Assembly Bill 628 and the impact on rent stabilized units, new state habitability requirements. And this is going to be by Leona Rollins.
Thank you, Chair Goldman. Okay, so as Chair indicated, we'll be talking about Assembly Bill 628 and the impact on rent stabilized units. The purpose of this presentation this evening is to provide an overview of AB 628 and its new statewide habitability requirements. It is then to discuss the impacts on tenants, property owners, and the administration of the rent stabilization ordinance, and then ultimately for the commission to receive and file this informational report. So what does AB 628 require? So AB 628 became effective on January 1st of this year. It applies to leases that are entered into, amended, or extended on or after that particular date. It does require that property owners provide and maintain a working refrigerator and stove. And if an appliance is recalled, then it must be repaired or replaced within 30 calendar days. So when it comes to the administrative interpretation, a refrigerator is an appliance capable of safely storing perishable food, while a stove is a primary cooking appliance using gas, electricity, or induction. It is important to note that many fridges and portable appliances do not satisfy this requirement under the law. The relationship to the ordinance, basically it does establish statewide minimum standards. AB 628 does not supersede our local rent stabilization ordinance, and all housing services registration petitions will continue to be governed by our regulations and our ordinance. Oops, sorry. And then potential impacts, it can lead to potential greater consistency for tenants. It allows for a better food and safety and tenant well-being. This will end up requiring a need for clearer documentation on whether it's considered an owner-provided appliance versus a tenant-provided appliance. And there's also going to lead to potential questions going forward about how housing services and ultimate rent adjustment petitions will be moving forward. So as of right now, given the fact that this is a very new law that went into place, there is not very much information on how to proceed with implementation. So we're going to be working very closely with the City Attorney's Office in order to monitor implementation and either further legal guidance. We'll evaluate updates to registration forms. We're going to be working on some frequently asked questions and additional outreach materials. And then we'll continue to provide all the appropriate resources and information to property owners and tenants. And if any tenants or property owners do have questions, they can always reach out to the Rent Stabilization Division, and I'm available for any questions or comments. Thank you.
And I want to thank you so much for bringing that to us because, yeah, it's a big thing, and it's important for tenants and landlords, everybody, to understand how these laws affect us. So thank you for that thorough report. And Commissioner Topchin?
Yes, Madam Manager. So the question is, yeah, you mentioned in the presentation this assembly bill doesn't change obviously the RSO, and I think you mentioned that if there will be any future cases, that you will consult with the city attorney. It's probably premature to, and I don't want to speculate, but can the tenant still apply for rent reduction for the refrigerator and the stove? And the rent reduction still will be applicable, or you don't know at this point?
So actually, we got a hearing application, I believe, 2 days ago for this particular issue. So even once there is an issue, it's an issue pertaining a induction oven and stove that was provided to the tenant under the lease agreement. This is now deemed inoperable, even though this person literally just moved in the middle of February. So although the landlord does have notification, 30 days has lapsed in order for them to do the repair or the replacement, no action has taken place. So at this time, that person is going to be moving forward with a hearing application to be scheduled. They'll get the rent reduction, will be into effect until the appliance is repaired and replaced.
Okay.
This is going to lead to further discussions because in these situations, these are not something that you can just easily say, oh, I'll wait a couple months to see when I get a new fridge or a new stove. Given the fact that this does impact health and safety, there is a lot of discussion among some of our advocacy groups. Will this then in turn require for tenants to end up buying their own replacement appliances? And how will that come into play? Which is why the discussion that we had earlier about reimbursement will ultimately set a precedent on how we move forward in those types of circumstances.
Okay, that's great to know. Thank you. And let's say if this type of complaint will still be considered as a reduction of services in housing services. So because this is a state law, which means it could be also a violation of the habitability code, which is not could be, but it is a habitability code violation. So at the same time, the inspectors can cite it, issue a citation. Is it both things can work at the same time?
Yes, so it will be no similar to any other habitability or maintenance issue. So essentially what would happen, either the tenant could initiate their preliminary complaint with code or with rent stabilization, and then ultimately whoever what the complaint started with, the other would refer to the other opposite division. Okay. So there will be collaboration because it's a two-front issue. So code would go out there, they would do their inspection, and if there is a habitability issue under this particular statute, they will issue a notice of violation, which in turn will then inform how we proceed with mediation if the tenant opts for that request, or they want to go ahead and proceed with a rent reduction.
Okay, perfect. Great explanation. Thank you.
Any other questions? Commissioner Purpose?
Does the bill not have penalties listed in it? I was trying to pull it up, but I couldn't see it.
So it actually does not. It doesn't have any penalties. It doesn't have administrative guidance. So typically with a lot of laws that are basically either strengthen or modify current state law when it comes to housing, we're going to have to basically, as they say, wait and see. We'll have to see what comes forward, what litigation comes into play, and what the case law will ultimately be. So it's open to interpretation as of right now until we hear otherwise.
Any other questions? Okay, I might just ask some scenarios for the record that tenants might face, just to discuss that. So say a tenant has a very old refrigerator that was left there from a previous tenant, and that refrigerator breaks, and the landlord said, oh no, we're not responsible for that because that was left from a previous tenant. In that scenario, what would happen here? Does this law apply to that, or what would that tenant do?
So even if that tenant moved into the property, before January 1st of this calendar year, even if the owner's position is that it was left over by a previous tenant, if that tenant moved in and that refrigerator or that stove was already in place, that is considered an owner-provided appliance. So they will be responsible for repair, replacement, and so on. So it'll be no different than a reduction of a housing service. So they would just proceed with our typical process that we have in place.
Okay, and here's another one, just for the benefit of anybody listening, really, because I know that you're so knowledgeable. So say a tenant moved in previously, just before this took effect, and they had to purchase their own appliance, and now that appliance breaks, and maybe they're in a position where they can't afford to replace that. Is that just unfortunate that because it happened before this law that now they just kind of have to deal with it themselves, or is there any remedy for that tenant?
So when me and Kellen were discussing this is where the component about the amended language in the law comes into play. Because when you think about it, your lease being amended, that can be something as simple as when you get a 30-day notice change in terms of tenancy, your lease is now being amended because your rental rate is changing. So a tenant could make that argument. But like I said, I'm not an attorney, so I can't give them legal advice. But like I said, if it was to come forward, we would consult with Kellen.
So someone could then call the rent stabilization division maybe and get, if they needed to get that advice from legal counsel.
Yes. So if a tenant has moved in after this law went into effect, they can opt in to have buying their own fridge. Landlord says, okay, cool. At any point in their tenancy, they can say, never mind, I don't want that. So if in that situation, their fridge broke, they could call their landlord and said, hey, I don't want to use my own fridge anymore. Can you please provide one for me? They would probably have to get theirs out of there, the broken one, but the landlord would have to provide them with a fridge. If they moved in prior to the law going into effect, it's only when the lease is renewed. My legal reading of that is once they issue your 30-day notice that your rent is going up, typically September, that is a change in tenancy. And so that's how, unless there's a court case or something else to that effect that says otherwise, that is an amendment to your lease, a small one, but an amendment nonetheless. And so that would trigger this law applying to people that had been in their apartments prior to January 1st of this year.
Okay, thank you. And I appreciate you both going through these scenarios, but because a lot of times people do ask, so I like to just have it on record so that we know. Okay, so I think are we done? Questions? Anybody has anything else? All right, so we will then move on to items from staff.
Sorry, I'm disheveled. Okay, so items from staff. So for those that are not aware, we took a preliminary update to City Council on July 20th regarding some of the potential changes to our ordinance and regulations for rent stabilization. We got some endorsement from City Council on how to move forward. The next step in this process is our stakeholder engagement. We literally just finalized this flyer today. So we are going to be having 2 sessions in the month of September. This will be added to our website. We have flyers in the back if need be. But on Wednesday, September 2nd, from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Kings Road Park in our community meeting room, we'll be having a tenant session where tenants can all come forth. We'll have a presentation about the potential changes to the ordinance and the regulations. They could give us, feedback, so on and so forth. And then we'll have a second session later in the month on Wednesday, September 30th from 6 to 8, same location, King Road Park, our community meeting room, for our landlords, management companies, and respective representative, so they could both have the opportunity to bring forth any communication or public comment that they have regarding this matter. Another note I wanted to share, our tentative schedule for this update. Like I said, the month of September, we focus on stakeholder engagement. This item is tentatively scheduled to be presented to the Commission as a public hearing on October 8th. And then it will be going to City Council tentatively for the first meeting on October 19th, and then subsequently again on November the 2nd. As of right now, all those dates are tentative or are subject to change. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions or?
Is there something that we need to be worried about if it needs that much public comment? And I mean, that's unusual.
So I don't think there's nothing to be worried about, but I'm always about open communication and transparency. So I don't want no one to feel like we brought forth all these changes without community input. So that's why we're giving them this opportunity to engage in the process. If they don't want to engage in the process, that's up to them, but the invitation has been given.
Thank you.
Will there be mailers that go out to them?
Yes.
Okay. All right. No comment? Okay. All right. So thank you for that. And we'll look forward to that. I know that was a lot of work probably on staff. All right. So do we have any items from commissioners? Or, what? No, we need public comment. Do we have any public? Seeing nobody in the room, so. Okay, items from commissioners?
Just would like to thank staff for tonight's those two new business items. Very clear. Staff reports, thank you so much, and legal counsel also is always great staff reports for the appeals part of the meeting. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks to staff as well, but I want to congratulate you on your first night as chair. You had a very heavy meeting for your first night as chair, and you did great. You did great.
Thank you. And I did not have to conduct it to the tune of Let It Go in the background. So as I've been conducting work meetings with my toddler. So, so at least there's that. Any other items from commissioners? So no? Okay. Well, I just wanted to say that I attended National Night Out, and one of the really wonderful things is that anytime I meet community members or somebody else introduces me as being on the Rent Stabilization Commission, one of the first things that people say is thank you. And so I wanted to make sure that you all hear that and that staff hears that, because it just goes to show how important the work is. And I really appreciate all the work that staff puts into helping us understand these things, into explaining things to the public, and just doing what you all do. And I want to thank my fellow commissioners as well. And so with that, we will adjourn the meeting. So this meeting is adjourned to the next regularly scheduled meeting of the Rent Stabilization Commission, to be held on August 27th, 2026 in the West Hollywood Park Public Meeting Room, Council Chambers.
That is able to assist them when filling it out. Once we have reviewed all the applications, we